During Sony's 2016 E3 press conference, a big surprise was announced, a brand new Spider-Man game developed by Insomniac and exclusive to the PlayStation 4. The good old webhead has been in a plethora of video games dating back to the Atari 2600. Some are good and some are really bad, but the concept of swinging around cities stopping crime has appealed to people as much as wanting to cut people to shreds with lightsabres. As a kid, I was a big Spider-Man fan. I had comics, toys, and was super excited for the movie. It basically had a little Spider-Man shrine. So, how does Insomniac's Spider-Man fare to a die-hard fan of this superhero? I don't know, I'm going to talk about the PlayStation 1 game instead. The story of the game is thus. Peter Parker is attending a science festival by Dr. Octavius, who has apparently gone straight. Peter's not buying it, and as he and Eddie Brock take pictures of the event, Spider-Man appears on stage and steals Octavius' invention. In the panic and commotion, Eddie's camera breaks and he is accosted by mini Jamesons, and he turns into Venom, which I guess he was hiding in his back pocket. Before we are even given a chance to ponder over the mystery, we see two very familiar silhouettes gloating over the heist. From there, Spider-Man attempts to clear his name and get to the bottom of the mystery, solving many unrelated crimes along the way. The setup is very Saturday morning cartoon show, and the dialogue reflects that as well. It also helps that a lot of the cast from the animated series come in to reprise their roles. Stan Lee even makes an appearance. I don't know who the writer was for this game, as the credits seem to admit that, but whoever they are, they did a bang-up job. Even though the main villain is spoiled from the start, there are enough twists and turns so the story doesn't completely shut down. To take on your enemies, you have a punch combo and a kick combo. You can't mix and match your combos, so you have to commit to either punches or kicks. This is fine when the game starts and enemies die to one combo and you're fighting them one, maybe two at a time. But it totally breaks later in the game with hardier enemies that attack in numbers. Now you can't complete a combo to push an enemy away, so they keep swarming you and chip away at your health bar. And once you get to the last enemy type, you've had enough and want to skip combat encounters entirely. These pink fox have a lot of health, attack in numbers, and have ridiculous range. If they are not spitting at you, they are using their super long limbs to knock you out of the air when you try to get away. They are also immune or resistant to your web attacks. Now let's talk about your webbing. Your main tool for Spider-Man for platforming and exploring is the definition of cloud swinging. When a new Spider-Man game is announced, everyone is focused on how the web swinging works. Unfortunately, Spider-Man web swinging is as basic as they come. Pressing R2 will swing Spider-Man in a straight line to the nearest building. You can kind of manipulate the angle or height he reaches the building at, but not by much. You don't have to be connected to anything to swing, hence cloud swinging. It can be frustrating in the pursuit parts of the game, where you're trying to be as fast and take the shortest route, but Spider-Man is insistent on touching every building. You can use R1 to quickly zip up to the ceiling. This can be used to quickly go into vents, or when you need to get the fuck out of an exploding building. The web swinging is basic, but it does its job. Webbing in combat, on the other hand, is a lot more involved. Pushing the triangle button, you can zip out a line of web that can hit enemies or interact with the environment. Wrapping an enemy will make them vulnerable, and wrapping them all the way will incapacitate them. But using too much webbing will reduce your web meter and you won't be able to use it. Heck, even swinging around causes the gauge to deplete, so you could come to a situation where you can't swing anymore. That's not all though, as the D-pad acts as a modifier to your webbing, allowing you to put webbing on your fist, shoot a web ball, create a web shield, or pull enemies towards you. This is a little more finicky honestly, and sometimes more trouble than it's worth in frantic situations, as sometimes Spider-Man will just turn instead of using the web. Maybe a system where you could rotate through your webbing attacks with select might have worked better, but having all of them available right away is important, so I'm not sure. But if Spider-Man really wanted to take out all these villains with his webbing, he would be much better off using his radioactive cum, which ended up killing Mary Jane. Level design is pretty decent for the most part, as this is a PlayStation 1 game. We can't really have a large open city to swing around in. The crux of the story, in fact, is that a gas has been released into the city, so you can't go to ground level, and that's the reason why the draw distance is so shitty. It would have been entertaining if more PS1 developers tried to come up with excuses for why there was Silent Hill fog everywhere. That being said, the city does look nice with a plethora of distinct buildings to swing and climb on. There are even some hidden secrets and Easter eggs for those who want to explore in more detail. You know, when you're not chasing Venom. Interior locations, on the other hand, are a little more hit and miss on the most part. Putting Spider-Man in a building is like putting Aquaman in the desert. Sure, I guess he could get the job done, but it's not playing to his strengths. Some interiors, like the bank, try to make it more stealth than swinging by having you sneak around on ceilings and walls, but Spider-Man's costume isn't really the definition of subtle. And of course, as is standard, there is a sewer level. It's not that bad in practice, even if it is a little long in the mouth, but the mere knowledge it's a sewer level makes me instantly hate it. And all the insta-kill water doesn't help either. By the time the game is throwing sentry turrets and electric floors at you, you've had enough and seen it all, so thankfully the game just overstates its welcome in terms of levels. A hero is measured by the villains they fight, and the Rogues Gallery for Spider-Man has some of the best, like the Wall, and the Wheel, or even the Submariner. Oh shit, he's in the game. But this game has some great picks for their bosses, and each have their own gimmicks, so not every fight is just keep punching until the bad guy falls over. Just like Spider-Man, your enemies are often stronger than you, so Spider-Man would have to use his spider brains to turn the tides. Some solutions are a bit cliche, like having Rhino headbutt electricity to win, but others like the Mysterio fight are memorable and have a bit more depth. But if you're talking about boss fights in this game, there is really only one to talk about. It's not even a boss fight if you want to be pedantic. So Carnage leaves Cletus Cassidy and takes over Doc Ock, creating the most horrible monster ever that totally isn't just Rhino painted red with his horns taken off. Fun fact, Doc Ock is not the only person that Carnage has infected. In fact, in one instance, Carnage infected the Silver Surfer, turning into Cosmic Carnage. Your mission objective here is just run. Run away from this monster while the sub-base explodes around you. And what better way to test your spider skills than having you web swing and zip line as fast and accurately as possible. And with Doc Ock screaming and explosions happening around you, this scene can leave quite an impression on a young boy, and is probably why this game is still remembered today. Speaking of villains in the Rogues Gallery, did you know that there's a Spider-Man villain called Stiltman? And even more incredibly, there's a Lady Stiltman? After beating the game, you have a few cool features to keep you entertained. Of course, you have collectibles that allow you to unlock concept art, comic book covers, a model viewer, and even allow you to change costume. These costumes aren't just cosmetic, as each have their own strengths and weaknesses. My favourite is this Scarlet Spider costume. Some suits allow you to turn invisible, or have unlimited webbing, or you could play as Bagman and have a maximum of 2 web cartridges. Out of all these costumes, the one I'm missing the most is the Japanese Spider-Man, where he has a giant sick-ass mech. Or just do what I do as a kid and use the cheat code that unlocks everything. For the longest time I didn't know this was Stan Lee spelled backwards and wondered what eelnats were. Also, if you put in swear words in the cheat menu, Spider-Man comes back and punches it. As far as action platformers go, at the time, Spider-Man isn't the top of the pack by any means. Stuff like Spyro and Crash are far better examples. However, if you are a fan of Spider-Man, the amount of fan service on offer here will distract you enough that the less polished side of the game won't bother you too much, with references to all the comics and characters to even a remix of the classic Spider-Man theme with even a sick-ass drop to it. So if you remember watching the old Spider-Man cartoon where Spider-Man couldn't punch people as that's far too violent, or if you read the comics before Marvel went off the deep end, I recommend this game to keep you entertained for an afternoon. Hey, I managed to get through the whole video without saying the game makes you feel like Spider-Man.